stick this behind you.
Oh, okay.
And you're not from Colorado either.
You're right there.
Me, I was raised in East Texas.
You was what?
Raised in East Texas, but I was born in Rocky Ford, Colorado.
So in East Texas, are you talking about?
Nacogdoches.
Nacogdoches.
Real close to Tyler, yeah.
Searching for connection.
Austin, yeah.
My uncle went to school there.
Yeah, so did Red Bottoms. He went to school there for a little while.
Yeah, my dad actually died.
You know, it's kind of like the anchor baby thing.
He's buried in.
You know, that was never
Bluetooth
set up to be
pairing.
an anchor baby. That was set up for the slaves.
Searching for connection.
And the Democrats.
Bluetooth pairing. Bluetooth pairing.
I know there's
If you're not on the side of truth,
No, they
you
are.
have to,
yeah, because
you have to pervert truth. You have to change truth. That's the same
Bluetooth pairing.
with God and Satan.
you're not the
God is the creator.
Bluetooth.
Jesus, the Logos, the Word,
and
He speaks things into existence.
but they're leaving to go to Lubbock.
Oh, we
Jesus
used
said
to
that
live
He
out
sent
by
the Holy
Lubbock
Spirit
City.
to bring us into all truth.
My granddaughter.
So truth is from God. All truth comes from God, and all lies.
Bluetooth.
Satan is not the creator of any of that. He's a liar. He deceiver twists. God creates, Satan perverts. I think that's his circuits. It is on.
Okay. I already told you to get my book. All right.
I'm up to 15. Thanks. Maybe I did something. Maybe I unplugged it or something.
Oh, you know what? Might help if I turn the transponder on. There we go.
There we go.
Have you seen any of that riot stuff that they're planning this weekend?
I didn't. I wasn't. I've been up at the Capitol in the last few weeks. So state police will immediately send us out messages.
Bluetooth
This is going on over here. Stay away from this side. Saturday morning, they sent us a text that said we're closing down the Capitol. Actually, what is today? Today's Friday. So I think it was Sunday afternoon. They said we're shutting down the Capitol. And on Monday, they said the same thing. They're shutting it down for a few hours. And they actually told everybody Monday, don't come to the Capitol. Sunday, they said we're shutting it down. There was people in the Capitol doing some things. So they shut it down for a while, opened it up, and the state police made sure everybody got out. And then they're saying don't park your cars in the parking spaces around the Capitol. So let me just, since you opened the can of worms, this stuff makes me angry. I can't park in my parking spot that is literally inside of concrete secure post that is supposed to be secured by state police. I can't park there because we're not going to put anybody in jail if they destroy all the cars in the parking lot.
Really?
That stuff drives me absolutely crazy. And I'm not saying this because I have like special privileges as a representative, but I was elected to go to that building and be in that building, but my car can't be safe sitting outside. So my dad has dementia. He is in a memory care unit right now. So over the last 3 or 4 years, he just got to the point where he can't drive his car. And it's gotten worse the last couple of years. So we actually sold it a few months ago, but I was trying to keep it up because his memory was still good enough he could look out and see the car.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be parked, sitting out there.
Yeah.
And so I would drive it, not once or twice a month, I would drive it to Capitol and back just to keep it good. Your seals will get dry and stuff. And one day I taken it up to the Capitol and somebody just went to town on it with a screwdriver and poked holes through the fenders and all kinds of stuff. So I go to state police. This is all under camera. Goes, I don't think the camera was facing that way that day.
Oh.
Well, I'm pretty sure I know who did it. It was another elected official. But how dare he say that somebody on the other side of the aisle is a bad guy? And so that was just basically on me. I had to go figure all that out. And it's my dad's car. It's not even my car. And this stuff happens all the time. They'll come tell us, you might want to move your car over to the parking garage because there's going to be a protest today. Well, why? You have a whole police force sitting down there. Why can't you just be standing out there? Which they will. Sometimes we see this, the police standing out there. And the state police is different than like sheriff and local police. Okay? The Denver Police Department is actually decent.
Give me a second.
But they have very bad
That's like a Mary
leadership.
Poppins bag. Hold on.
But when we're talking to the Denver police, they're actually pretty solid guys. The state police works for the governor. That's our problem.
No wonder.
Yeah. And so we don't get a lot of, they vandalize stuff, they tear things up, they do all this, and they just don't ever do anything. Nothing.
Why are they there?
That's my question.
Yeah, what did they
Theoretically, they're there to protect the government, not us. We actually had it on video, this was 2 years ago, we had a video of a representative opening a side door that doesn't have the what do you call it, where you go through the metal detectors? Side doors. So I have a badge that can get me in side doors, and I don't have to go through the metal detectors. I don't have to go through the metal detectors anytime. And it was on video, and we went to the state police and complained about this. They were letting in protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters into the Capitol. Let them up into the top, in the balcony, looking over. They were up there screaming and yelling and having flags, waving, doing all this. Every one of these things are breaking the rules. It is the job of the Speaker of the House to stop that. That's actually part of her regular job. And I sat and watched it. One of the Denver police officers came across to stop one of these guys who was hanging a flag over and throwing stuff down on us. It was like pieces of paper, and when that police officer came over, I looked back at the speaker and she pointed at him and said, "Don't do anything. Leave him alone." Well, that's actually her job.
And of course, she's a Democrat.
Yes. And so we actually got up, all the Republicans got up and walked out that day. We've done that three times actually, but we just got to go walk out because now, so this guy's throwing pieces of paper, what if he starts throwing rocks or something else? So, yeah. All right, how about I take a little bit of time and kind of give you some big picture stuff, and then you guys can ask me questions about anything.
You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, and just so we can get this question off the table, my favorite food is bacon. Right, so. Yeah. I live for bacon, which is weird because Jesus wasn't really a bacon fan. So. All right, so a little bit of background. I've been a pastor since I was 20 years old. My wife and I got married at 20, and I was a youth pastor when we got married. I've been a youth pastor for a few months, and then she joined me, and we've been in ministry together ever since then. We were youth pastors for about 6 years, and then we moved to Colorado to be lead pastors for the very first time. And we moved to Rocky Ford, and we were pastors in Rocky Ford for about 4 or 5 years, and absolutely loved it. That's where my wife really learned to cook authentic Mexican food. Probably 60-70% of our church was Hispanic, and I gained about 35 pounds in a year, but I loved it. So the church was great. We got to a point where it felt like we were supposed to leave there. We went to Strasburg. So if you guys know where Strasburg, just right east on I-70 from Denver. So we were there for 11 or 12 years, something like that. And then we went to Colorado Springs, that's where we've been now for about 13 years. And so ministry, pastoring is all I've ever done. it's, I mean, I've done a lot of other things because when you pastor a church, say in Rocky Ford, you have to do other work to support your family. And our kids were born in Texas. Our older two boys were born in Texas right before we moved. So they were little kids, 2, 3, 4 years old. And then our daughter was born in, while we were in Rocky Ford, but she was born in La Junta. And she's now almost 27, so that's been a while. And with that, done a lot of other things over the years to support my kids. And then our church would grow, and it'd get to the point where I could be supported by the church, and then I didn't have to have all the other side jobs. And so then we come to Colorado Springs, and I've always been politically charged. I've always processed things, said things, done stuff that has to do with what's going on out there. Now, again, not stuff like, I'm not going to get up in the pulpit as a pastor and say, hey, vote against this mill levy. That's you figure that out. Yeah. That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. I'm talking about things that have been made to be political, but I don't think they're political. I've always addressed things like abortion, and back in the day it was different, but now it's called transgender rights and all this other stuff, and I'll talk about some of that. But I've always kind of been politically charged, and then COVID hits, and we already had an online presence. We already were videoing services. We've been doing that for years, and so we just didn't stop having church. Now, that first week that happened, I think we had 10 people in service because everybody assumed we weren't going to have church because nobody was having church. But we just kept saying our doors are open. We don't close our doors. And so through that, we also didn't mask or distance. This is what gets me about some of that stuff. How am I going to tell a grown adult, you need to sit 6 feet from each other? Now, we know you drove in the same car to get here, and you're going to go sit at lunch with each other, and you're going to pull your mask down while you're eating. But here in church, let's stay apart. I just never went with all that stuff. And so a lot of people, the reason I bring that up is a lot of people think that's when I kind of kicked into this political direction that I've taken in my life, and that really isn't it. I'd already been thinking, not to be in politics, but I already thought politically, and I addressed these things regularly. And so then I had a state representative come to me and say, I think you should consider being representative. And I told her, get behind me, Satan. And so and then I had the incumbent in my district who was running for Congress at the time. He came to me also, he said, you need to be a state representative. I said, guys, I'm a pastor. I'm just a pastor. I mean, I don't like the word just. I think the pastors are one of the most important people in society, although society doesn't see it that way anymore. But I told him I'm a pastor. I don't do this political thing. And then one of the representatives said to me, well, will you promise to at least pray about it? And I thought, that sounds a lot like a trap. And so here I am. I've been a representative now. This is my second term. And as some of you were mentioning, and you said you've seen some of this stuff, I am not shy. As a representative, I will get into the fight every single day. And I don't hold back. I think truth needs to be spoke from at every angle. In fact, this is one of the things, I think, Larry, you said something about you'd come up to testify, but you didn't get to.
I called in. I couldn't hear.
Okay. So this is important, okay? Because all the time I get questions from somebody that's tried it once, and then they say, well, why would I waste my time? I sat online till midnight, and then they just cut it off, which usually they'll go to 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I've literally been in committee until 7 in the morning. They shut it off just in time for us to switch gears and go back to the floor and start all over. And we've done that 3 or 4 different times. But people will say, if I'm not going to get to testify, or, I drive all the way to the Capitol and I testify for 2 minutes, what's the point? I have the same conversation with representatives. that'll say, we're gonna sit and debate this bill for hours and hours and hours, and then they're just gonna pass the bill. What's the point? Right? As it really is a point. And here's the point. The most important, there's a few, but this is the most important. When you speak truth, you are speaking God. All truth comes from God. All lies come from Satan. Scripture is very clear about this. Right? He's the father of all lies. Okay? When you speak truth, you are speaking something that is transcendent. It is spiritual and it is bigger than you and I. It's truth. It's a spiritual reality that you put out there. Okay? We don't see it that way. We don't process it that way because we are so limited. I've been doing not really a series, but the last few weeks I've been talking to my church about that we are spiritual people first. When you speak truth, that is spiritual first. And then it's other things. And it's transcendent. And specifically when you tie this directly into written word of God, it never returns empty. It always accomplishes what it's supposed to. That's what Scripture tells us, right? So, speaking truth to your family, speaking truth in your church, this is what I say to pastors. Speak truth. Not just a good message for the day, but speak profound truth. Jesus is God. That's profound truth. Okay, so coming to the Capitol, speaking, getting online, speaking. You have the opportunity to speak truth. Never take it for granted. Never take it casually. Always take the opportunity when you can. And in any other setting, you're sitting in the coffee shop and you hear the table over talking about all this stuff. Maybe not every time you get up and say something, but maybe sometimes you actually do say, well, wait a second. This is actually what the truth is. That changes people's minds and hearts. I have those conversations. I really do. I used to just have them as a pastor. It's actually much more difficult nowadays to have them as a elected person because they assume I'm talking politics. I don't tell people, in fact, for years, I'm on an airplane or something, I don't tell somebody I'm a pastor. When I'm talking to them about whatever they're talking about, and I don't say I'm a pastor. Why? Because their brain will switch and they'll say, well, you're supposed to say this stuff. That's the party line. So I don't tell them. When I'm out golfing, I don't seem to get to golf anymore, but because I'm elected. But when I was out golfing, I would talk to guys. I love to witness to guys on the golf course. And they'd say, what do you do for a living? And I would say something like, I'm a motivational speaker. I'd say something like that, right? Because why? If I say I'm a pastor, you know the first thing that they always say every single time? Oh, I'm sorry for all my bad language. Like, but I'm not God. It doesn't matter what you say in front of me. I don't like it, but it doesn't matter. I'm not God. But I like to talk to people and speak truth. You make a difference with truth. All right, now let me give you some big picture stuff. This is, has anybody here ever heard of the book called The Blueprint? Ever heard of that book? Okay. Let me start kind of ground zero then. Basically, and I would strongly suggest, if you like to read, get that book. It backs up 25 years in the history of the state of Colorado and explains to you how Governor Polis got to the governor's seat. This was discussed 25 years ago with 4 people. Governor Polis was one of them. There was a person named Bridges. That was another one. There was a person named Stryker. She's a doctor. And these 4 people sat down and said, we're going to completely transform Colorado. We're going to turn it completely blue, and we're going to turn it Marxist. This is their words, not mine. It's in the book. A lot of research done on this. Obviously, jump forward. I don't have to give you all the details, but jump forward, and they did that. They flipped Colorado blue, and now we're working strongly toward Marxism. Okay? And you understand the concept or the difference between just saying we're going to have a political mindset. So you've got the left mindset, the right mindset. That's not what I'm talking about. This isn't conservative and liberal. There's another category, and it's Marxism. It's socialism, Marxism. Okay? That's what their goal was 25 years ago to turn Colorado into. Now, let me give you a few quick highlights, and then I can dig down into any of these as much as you want. Let me give you some highlights. Why would, and when I talk about the elected officials in the House and the Senate in the state of Colorado, I am talking about Marxists. Many of them, most of them are actually Marxist leftists. They're not just your average Democrats. The average Democrats across the state of Colorado do not believe what the people in that House are doing every single day. And some of you that have been up there and you said to me, I didn't know it was as bad as it was. Well, it's worse than you think. Even when you've been up there and you're hearing this, they are coming after parental rights, destroying childhood, all of these kind of things at high rates. So then the question is, why would they do that? Why would they make a bill that says you have to go by this transgender ideology, or your children are going to be taken from you? Why would they do that? Don't some of them have children? Most of them have children. Now, part of it is they're going to be part of the ideology. They're going to adhere to the ideology. Okay, that's part of the conversation. But even then, all that somebody has to say is, well, I don't think they did, and their children can be taken away. Right? That's the law that we just passed. So why would they do that? Why would they be so strong on abortion? I've run anti-abortion bills every year that I've been in the House. Why are they so adamant about it? There's got to be a bigger reason, right? It's not just we hate kids, and that's actually part of the reason. I believe strongly people are created in the image of God, and that the children among us are the most innocent, and they represent this image of God more than... And so if you want to put image of God, this is my theology, or you can accept it or not, whatever. But I believe we're created in the image of God first spiritually, then mentally, then emotionally, and least physically. Right? We do see, the finger of God when Daniel and the Nebuchadnezzar and all that. We see the finger of God, but we don't see an arm. So it's not a legitimate conversation to say, well, God's got a hand. The only thing that proves is God's got a hand that's not attached to an arm. Right? So that's the way my brain works. But so we're creating the image of God, and the children are the least among us. They're the easiest target, and I think Satan enjoys attacking them because it hurts the heart of God, the quickest and the easiest. The same with us too, but I think you understand the difference. So why would they do this? Let me go to some other things. The Venezuelan drug cartel, the DEA has said that Aurora is the headquarters for the Venezuelan drug cartel for the entire United States. And if you're hearing people say, oh, that's not a real thing, drive to Aurora and you can see it yourself. It is there. Our governor says nothing to see here. Our governor is a liar. He knows it's there because he is propping it up on purpose. I'll explain that. Our Attorney General, nothing to see here. There's no cartel. Yes, there is. Do you guys remember a month or so ago when there was a big illegal immigrant bust in Colorado Springs? That's just a couple miles from my house. And they were saying it was in a nightclub, and I guess it was dollar cover night for illegal immigrants. Let me give you the truth. It wasn't a nightclub. It was a bar that was closed down that is the headquarters for the meetings of the Venezuelan drug cartel that ICE and the sheriffs and the police had been watching them come back and forth between Colorado Springs and Aurora for a long time now. They were setting up another location in Colorado Springs is what they were doing, and that's what they were meeting there for. And by the way, the sheriff and the ICE, they have all released statements that talk about this, but the media in Colorado shuts this stuff down. They will not let it get out there in the public, but this is actually what's going on. And they're also setting this up in Pueblo. If you remember down in West Cliff area, the van that was stopped by the sheriff, it was a random stop, 800,000 rounds of ammunition inside that van. That's because they said, well, yeah, but it came from Utah. It came from Mexico. It just came up to Utah and then across. This has been happening for a long time. They're realizing this now. By them accidentally stopping this van, they realize there's been guns and ammunition been coming into the state of Colorado. So why? Then we passed a bill, $500 million. We're supposed to cut $1.2 billion this last session, but instead we increased funding for illegal immigrants by $500 million. And specifically, so 1312 is the transgender bill that got all the attention. 1309 is how it was funded. 1309 would deserve a read. If you want to just be very angry for an evening, read 1309, because it literally was funding illegal immigrant transgender surgeries free of charge, and it gives a list there of all of these cosmetic surgeries that are available to illegal transgender people, but you can't go get them. Tummy tucks. I didn't know some of these things existed till I read it, but you can add stuff to your butt, make your butt bigger. Yeah. I didn't know that was a thing people liked, but I always thought, less. But this is what's. I mean, there's a whole list. I'm not talking facial stuff. All kinds of things. Okay, go read the bill. You'll be so disgusted. So here's the thing: why is the state of Colorado putting so much money into propping up illegal immigration? I'm not talking about the mom and pop that come across. It's still illegal, but come across the border and they set up a little food truck or something, and they're trying to get by. That's what I'm talking. We're talking about what Trump started doing with the National Guard in Los Angeles. Going after the criminals that we know they're there. Let me give you a little scary. Venezuelan drug cartels. Take a guess at how many known cartel members are in the state of Colorado.
I'd be scared to guess.
Thousands.
Between 45 to 50,000 right now that we know for sure. Okay? So here's the thing. Now we know that MS-13, the biggest known cartel for decades and decades. I lived in El Paso when I was a kid for a little while. I actually lived right outside of El Paso. And MS-13 was all over the place then, graffiti everywhere. I was 9 years old, almost 50 years ago. And it was already very strong and active then. Now, MS-13 has made an agreement. The DEA explained this, put this out there. But here's the biggest thing. The Venezuelan cartel / government has also put this out and made it public. MS-13 is now combined with the Venezuelan drug cartel to cooperate, and one of their big things is now they're going to go after cops, they're going to shoot cops. Okay, but you know what their cooperation is? This is where you got to start digging down and going, wait a second, something's not matching, something's not adding up. Their biggest priority, this is the Venezuelan government released this. Their biggest priority for the cartel to be in Aurora, Colorado is not to sell drugs. They still do that. Not to take over apartment complexes and murder and rape people. They are doing that. You can talk to actual Aurora police officers. They are told to stand down, but they say it is as bad. That is truly a war zone in that little area right there. These are the cops that are saying this. Okay, but the cartel leadership in Venezuela said that they are there for the primary purpose of disrupting, causing confusion and disrupting our political systems in Colorado. That should cause everybody concern.
Absolutely.
Because,
how would they do that? I mean,
well, look at the LA riots.
well,
That's part of the way they do that, but they do this in a lot of other ways too. When you can take over a whole area and the police are told to stand down, now you can control a lot of things. We're also pumping money into that like crazy in Colorado right now, but we're calling it, illegal immigrant transgender surgeries. But we're pumping all kinds of money into this. Remember, marijuana is legal, fentanyl is legal to the point where you can kill 700 people with just what you can carry in your pocket. That's legal. All this stuff is part of this. They're trying to disrupt the whole system. If you go back 25 years ago, this book I was talking about, Blueprint, talks about Polis and these 3 other people. They will take over the state of Colorado, turn it blue, and then turn it Marxist. Basic concepts of Marxism. No God. You got to take God out of the system, or you cannot have Marxism or communism, because the state is the primary. You can't worship something more than the state, which, by the way, is what got Jesus in trouble back in the day with the Roman government, and then the Jewish government also said, we're not going to allow you to say you're God. So, take away God out of the government, then come after families, dissolve the family unit. Have you ever heard of the book called The Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn? This was written in the 60s, and the Russian government put all these prison camps. They called them gulags. Put all these prison camps out there, and they would intentionally go separate mothers and fathers from the children, put children in one gulag over here, and the parents in a complete different gulag. So a lot of people don't understand or know the history of all of this in Russia. But we know that about 20 to 25 million people were killed during World War II, and specifically about 6 million Jews, right? The Russians from 1920 until about 1975, which is when the Gulag stopped, they were putting their own people into prison camps all over the country to control, because Marxism has to control. You have to use pronouns the proper way. Oh wait, did I jump forward to now? But Marxism controls. And on top of that, they used them as forced labor, slave labor all over the country. Russia killed over 180 million of their own people during that time frame. But we don't hear about that like we do with World War II and with Pol Pot and some of this other stuff. It's a big read, but it's a great read if you want to understand some of what we're seeing in our country is the Gulag Archipelago. Okay, so we have to get rid of God. We have to take God away. We have to separate families, destroy the family unit. We have the state needs to own the children. We had a state representative last year that got up in the well and said, your children do not belong to you, they belong to the state. She said that. That and her second statement is what got her voted out. She's not in the House this year. But she also said that she is going to run a bill that will make the age of consent for everything, sexual age of consent, surgeries, anything you want, in Colorado at 12 years old. Okay? She did not get voted in because of those two statements, which gives me hope, right? So you've got to control the children. The children belong to the state. Do you know in Canada right now, a child belongs to the state until they're 3 years old? That's in the law. This is the kind of stuff we're heading for in Colorado. Okay, so here's how all of this ties together. The cartel, the control of our economic institutions. Governor Polis has got up 3 years in a row, the 3 years that I've been in the House as a representative, and I've been told he's done it before this, but it's on video, you can go look at this. Every year he has said nobody needs to own property.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a group called the World Economic Forum? Okay, they are a controlling group. Klaus Schwab, a German, was in charge of this for years. He just retired a couple of months ago from this. But the World Economic Forum is the financial backing and the structural control of the Governors Association in the United States. All of the governors in the United States are part of this, except 2 or 3. One of them is Kristi Noem. She's not a part of it. She said, I understand what it's about. I will not be a part of this. The World Economic Forum controls the Governors Association. And guess who the president of the Governors Association is? Governor Polis. All of this stuff ties together. The day the pandemic happened, all of these governors handed out their plan. It was almost identical plan in 5 states, California, New Mexico, Colorado, Washington, and I think either Nevada, I think it might have been, I don't remember the 5th one. But they all handed the plan out to the legislative body and to the states that they're governors of. And it was the exact same plan that had been given to them a year and a half earlier by the Governors Association via the World Economic Forum.
Because they knew this was coming down?
Because they planned it. Okay? All of this is documented now. When I said this stuff 5 years ago, people were like, conspiracy. Okay, not conspiracy. We now know it was all part of the plan. Right? Now, Why am I saying all of this? Our state has been taken over by Marxists. The Marxists in the House and the Senate are running bills constantly to reinforce that Marxist mentality. And I could sit here all night and name these bills to you.
You guys ran, if Dusty Johnson told us the other day, Wednesday, that there was 600 and some bills presented and 600 passed.
Yeah. And this was
One legislative session.
this was a very, very low year.
Wow.
Okay? My first 2 years, we introduced, not me, the over 700 bills, about 750 bills, and about 650 were passed. This is normal. Now here's the question I have for anybody in Colorado. How many bills do we need passed every year? How many new laws do we need every year? When I ask the question, I say, how many do you think, when I do town halls like this, and I say, how many bills do you think we pass? People say 50, 60. We've done that in a day. One day. New laws that you have to go by. It's going to cost you money. Your freedoms are taken away so that we can build this state in the image that Polis has decided to build it in. This is why this election is so important. Okay? Let me explain quickly. There are other people running. I'm not trying to attack these guys. There are some really good, solid Republicans running. They're my friends. 3 of them specifically are my friends. I am going to be the next governor of Colorado. I'm the only Republican that can beat Senator Bennett. And Senator Bennett is who's going to rise to the surface. It's not going to be Attorney General Weiser and all these other people. It's going to be Senator Bennett. Because Polis and Bennett have an agreement. This has been recorded. It's been documented. Polis he's term limited. He cannot run any longer. Bennett will have 4 years left on his senator term. This is their plan. He will be elected as governor. Governor Polis will be appointed to finish out those 4 years. Now, why does Polis want to be a senator for 4 years? He's already been a governor. He needs that on his resume because it'll help stack his resume because he wants to be president. Okay. Now, with all of this said, 26 is so important. Now let me give you, this is all the bad news. Let me give you some good news. Okay? And this is actually, I can explain in more detail, but there's a lot of things that I'm going to say that sound anecdotal. They're not, but we backed them up with all kinds of statistics and numbers. And I can explain if you want me to go down the rabbit hole on some of these. We are seeing something that has been happening in the last 6 months that has been, will put me in the governor's seat. We're actually seeing a handful of things. Here's the biggest one. We're seeing Democrat leadership all over the state of Colorado. We even saw this in the House and the Senate, where the majority leader in the House came and talked to some of us Republicans and said, we know. Now, this last session was the worst session ever when it came to laws in the history of Colorado. Worst gun bill, the transgender bill, funding abortion from taxpayers. I mean, you just go down the line and it was bad, right? The worst, I think, ever. But they came to us and said, we know we're going to lose seats. So next session, next year, spring of 26, we're coming after you guys. By coming after us, what more can you do? How much more depraved and evil and demonic can you do to us in the state of Colorado? To our parents, to our children. How much more can you do? But they've already got the plans, they've already got the bills, and they told us this. Here's the thing that is important to notice about the statement. Not that they're coming after us, but they said we know we're going to lose seats. Why? They have gone so far, and they have gone so far into leftism and Marxism that the Democrats across the state are saying that we're not on the same page anymore. You've left us. This is not who we are anymore. Do you guys know this guy? Okay, good. So here they're saying this to us, right? We didn't go ask them the question. They said, we know we're going to lose seats. We know we're going to lose seats in the House. We know we're going to lose seats in the Senate.
How do they know that? Because of the turnout of the whole country?
Because of their analytical feedback. So you're So when you're doing this stuff, you're doing assessments and analytics all the time. Well, I'll give you one of the ways they know this, because this came to me personally. One of the biggest Democrat lobbyists in the state of Colorado. So when you say a lobbyist, it's a company, it's not an individual. And a lobbying corp will have, the big ones have 40, 50 lobbyists on their payroll. And they're in every single business thing, talking to representatives, talking to business, talking to the people, doing all this kind of stuff because they're trying to get certain bills passed that benefit them. And one of the biggest Democrat lobbyist group in the state of Colorado said just about 4 weeks ago, said that it's gotten so bad, all of their feedback from Democrats and Democrat lobbyists and Democrat-based kind of companies and things like this, and elected officials. They said it's gotten so bad that they are anticipating, they're saying this, I didn't say this, although I do say this, that the Democrats are going to lose all 4 state seats in 26. Governor, Secretary of State, Attorney General, and Treasurer. All of those are going to be Republican. Now, I don't know what their information is, but I do know on our campaign team, I do know where our information is coming from. I do know where our analytics are coming from. And I can give you some very anecdotal stuff too, where I get phone calls, emails from Democrats saying, how can I help you be governor? I had a phone call from a guy that had been to a fundraising event for governor on the Democrat side. He's a Democrat donor. And he called me the next day and he said, I can't do this anymore. My party has left me. How can I help you become governor? I'm like, well, you can start by giving me a lot of money. You know, that's what he does. But here's the thing is then I just ran down all this stuff. I said, I think it's worse than you know. So I was mentioned a little bit ago, but I'll expand on this. So I've been going around the whole state for the last couple of years trying to wake the church up, trying to wake pastors up. It's now happening. Pastors all over the state are saying, we need you to come talk to our church, our group, and they're setting up conferences, all kinds of things. And I'll have breakfast meetings with 3 or 4 pastors, or I'll have an event with 200 pastors. Okay, I'll do any of that stuff. And so they're setting up some of these events. The church is waking up. That's the first good news. If the church in Colorado will just wake up and vote, we're a red state. Okay. The second thing is we're getting a lot of feedback from Democrats that are saying we've gone so far, we've lost our base. Okay, when 1312 came out, and it didn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, when parents are reading this, and it literally says in there, we will take your children if you don't agree to our ideology. And again, LGB is a sexual preference. TQ plus is an ideology. And it's a Marxist ideology. Because why? It's controlling. It's all about control. It's not about, I'm a guy, I want to wear a dress. That is not what it's about. I don't care. I've never cared. Now, I care on a spiritual level, but I don't care if a guy wants to wear a dress. Wear a dress, whatever. All right? That's a mental illness. That's a mental health issue. And by the way, I think I told some of you earlier, I had a meeting with a group of doctors last night. Some of them medical doctors, some mental health, psychiatrists, psychologists, that kind of thing. And I said that to them. I said, what do you think about that? And they said, we've always known this in the mental health ranks. This is a mental issue. This is a mental illness. It's not a sexual preference. And here's how we know it's a Marxist ideology too, is we will control you. We will separate the family. We will control the children. And we will tell you what words you can use and what words you cannot use. You will adhere to all of our ideology, or we will shut you down and put you in jail, is the long term. And we're already starting to see that. That's how we know it's an ideology, not a sexual preference. Right? So, we're hearing from Democrats all over the state saying these leftist Marxists in the Capitol have gone too far. We're done with this. Here's another major demographic switch that we saw last November in the election with Trump. The highest change, demographic voting change in the history of the United States with the Hispanic community. They voted for Donald Trump at the highest levels ever, and not just like a bump or 2 percentage point, but like 22% to 25% higher for Republican than Democrat ever in the history of Colorado and the United States. And on the other side of that, I'm very strong in the Hispanic community. I pastored a Hispanic church for a while. We're very, very strong within that community. And I believe before this is all over, I'll have the Hispanic endorsements, the 3 or 4 major conservative, Republican, Hispanic groups. So you put the church is starting to wake up. Democrats are saying we're done. And Democrat leadership is telling us they are saying we're losing stuff. We're going to lose these seats, these seats, these seats. Then the Hispanic community, you put those 3 together, I'm the next governor of Colorado. Yes, sir.
So, this is some leaders talking, but are they going to talk to their own constituents and say, this is the way we think you ought to vote? You should vote Republican instead of Democrat?
Are you saying the Hispanic community?
The people that are saying we've had enough.
Yeah, so...
Because I'm around some Democrats, they wouldn't change their mind if a bomb come off this side. I mean, they're Democrat, they're going to vote Democrat no matter what.
Yeah, I get that, and I do come across it. So let me dig down a little bit here statistically. Okay, I know I need 350,000 Democrat votes. Above everything else, I need 350,000 Democrat votes from Denver to Fort Collins, including Boulder. Okay. Democrats in rural communities are different than Democrats in urban communities. Okay, you really do have you really do have the old blue dog, yellow dog Democrats kind of thing in the rural communities more than you do in the urban communities. What we're seeing in the urban mindset is they're voting more now based on issues rather than on a political mindset. And here's one of the biggest ones: you take the younger generations. Well, there's a bunch with this, but I'll just touch on a couple of things. When you take 35 and below, Republicans or Democrats don't care about the party affiliation almost at all. It's not really a thing anymore like it was back in the day. And if you'll notice, even voting, you can't just go in and, back in the day, you guys probably remember this, but you could go in and push Republican and pull the lever and it would do all Republican. You could go push Democrat, pull the lever, and it would do all Democrat, right? That doesn't even exist anymore. The party affiliation is not a thing like it used to be. And here's one of the biggest statistics: 25 and under are almost all strongly conservative. This is a mindset. But here's part of the reason. Now I'm suggesting this is part of the reason. I don't have a lot of the facts here, but I do think this is part of the reason. Every generation has to have its rebellion. Every generation where we're going to push against mom and dad and everything we're going to be the most unique, rebellious generation ever, right? In fact, I was just at Liberty University this last week up in Virginia, and there was a group of lawyers coming out of the Liberty Law School. They're all in their early to mid-20s. And one of the girls said, well, one of the things that you don't, talking to all of this was a conference of lawmakers, Christian lawmakers. I am the Colorado chair of National Association of Christian Lawmakers. There's about 50 representatives, senators from all over the United States sitting there. And she said, what you guys, she was talking to older people, what you older people don't understand is our generation, we express ourselves through music. And we see some of our foundational things tied to our music. I didn't say anything. I almost did. I almost stood up and said, every generation does that. Name a generation. And by the way, the music of the 60s and 70s, you will never compete with that. But you think, because why? Because each generation thinks they're unique, right? They're going to do all the things that nobody else has ever done. Well, here's the thing with this new generation. You know how they're rebelling against the man and against the government and all this other stuff? They're conservative. Because why? They sat and watched Biden for the last 4 years, knowing this can't be the answer. I was in a class at CU doing a political teaching class. And they knew I was coming. They were supposed to have done all their homework. So they came out with all their guns, right? They're abortion, transgender, and they were going to tear me down. Because you know that nobody's smarter than a 19-year-old in undergrad. And so they're coming at it and doing all this stuff and boom, boom, boom. And I'm answering their questions and shutting them down one after another. And they're just like, well, that didn't work, you know. And part of the reason is because I'm not an idiot. Right? I also have multiple degrees. I have a terminal degree. I know more than the 19-year-old. I do. But they couldn't process that. So they're going to come at me. And finally they went through everything they had, and they couldn't get a chink in my armor, right? So I said, are you guys about done? I said, how about I ask you some questions? Oh yeah, sure, ask us questions. Stumped them on the very first one. I said, how many of you in here, you think that this was before the election, this was like last September-ish. I said, how many of you in here think that President Biden is running the country? There's like 2 or 3 conservatives and 150 as leftist liberals as you can imagine at 19, right? I said, how many of you think Biden's running the country? Nobody raised their hand. And when that happened, I'm like, I got you. You know, I own you now, right? And I said, so here's the thing. This is the next question that many of you in this room, you think this is the next question. I said, but you're wrong. You don't know the next question to ask. And I said, how many of you think that the next question that you should ask is, then who's running the country? Everybody raised their hand. I said, that's not the most important question. You do need to eventually get to that question. But the most important question that comes next is, in a republic with an electoral college, separation of powers, three powers within the United States, the separation of powers, and how we elect from state to state, Congress, Senate, and then president, in this republic that supposedly everybody's free, we the people run the country. The most important question is, how can the entire country know he's not running the country and they still let it happen? That's the most important question. Not who's running it, but why is this happening? You could tell they were just blank stares because they didn't understand almost anything that I just said. I mean, here's the reality, guys. We know. Now, come back to your question. Let me go to each of the 3 demographics that I mentioned: the church, the Democrats, and the Hispanics. And by the way, there's more demographics that add up to more votes to put me in the governor's seat. But let's just work on those 3. The reason I've been going all over the state and talking to pastors is I believe if I can wake the pastors up enough just to say, I would like to wake them up a whole lot more, okay? But if they will just open the Bible and say, as Christians, your responsibility is to vote. You have an obligation, a spiritual obligation to vote. Stop buying into this mentality of separation of church and state. That has never been biblical, it has never been practical, and it was never the foundation of our country. The foundation of our country is, as a Christian, you actually have a moral obligation to vote. Because we're talking about kids, we're talking about parents, we're talking about the future of our country. So if I can get the pastors to wake up and just tell their people, guys, vote. Just vote. Less than 50% of the Christians in the state of Colorado vote. Less than 50. Because we're not even to half. Okay, so if I can get that demographic, I'm saying the pastors, to start verbalizing, and by the way, it is happening. Okay, it is happening at a high degree. It's surprising to me how much it's now happening. If I can get that, now you're looking at, I really believe we're a red state if we just wake the church up. But that pastors are talking to the people, so that's one group that's waking up that demographic. Okay, let me skip the Democrats. Let's go to the Hispanic community. Then I'll come back to Democrats. Okay, the Hispanic community, we're seeing some of these same dynamic changes. The older Hispanics have always voted Democrat in large mass. The younger Hispanics are not. Now, the Hispanic community, I pastored a Hispanic church. I know what I'm talking about. The Hispanic community of every demographic, every culture within the United States,
The Hispanic community, I have found, is the most family-oriented and the most close-knit. But they've been duped into voting Democrat because they're going to get. The illegal immigrant thing has woken up the Hispanic church to a great extent. Most Hispanics are not in favor of illegal immigration. Most. Now, that's not the way the media plays it. But they are not. Why? Because either their generation or somewhere fairly recent in their history, their family came and did it legally. And then voted Democrat so they could get all the benefits, right? And all of a sudden, the Democrats have abandoned them, which, by the way, the black community is slowly starting to wake up to this, but much, much slower than the Hispanic community has. The Hispanic community is saying, you've tossed us to the curb. Now you're just handing out one bill alone, 1309, you can go look it up, one bill alone, $500 million to illegal immigrants. And the Hispanic community is saying, that's all the benefits we used to get. Exactly. They kicked you to the curb. They never did care about you. They were lying to you the whole time. You bought it, and now the Hispanic community is going, wait, this isn't matching up. Specifically the younger generation. And I'm saying about 35 and younger. They're saying this is not okay anymore. So they're bailing. They're bailing. I spoke in Hispanic church in Denver. The Hispanic pastors across the whole metroplex there, the Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins triangle, the Hispanic church is coming out very, very strongly. And by the way, their culture, if you're a Hispanic pastor, you're not scared to say stuff to your church. It's all of the white churches that were woke and scared. The Hispanics, that pastor will get up and tell them. They'll call them out by name sometimes and say, you need to do this. I saw you acting like this. You better treat your mama better. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. This is their community. They are much stronger. And they are waking up the Hispanic community throughout Denver and Boulder, Fort Collins. I've spoken their churches. They're very strongly behind me. It is. I think that's my strongest demographic, even more than just the church. And so that's the second one. The third one is the big one. This is the most difficult. Are the Democrats saying to each other, we better vote Republican? That is not happening. Okay, that is not ever going to happen. But what they are saying when they're having their discussions, and this is why we know from the lobbyists and some other groups, this is why we know there's a crack in the wall. The Democrats across the state of Colorado are fractured and fighting like crazy. Yes, the Republicans are too, but not as bad as the Democrats. Because theirs is much more of a moral, down to the very basis of who they are. The Republicans, it's a little more topical. Okay, I could discuss that, but here's the reality. They're saying you're not coming for our kids. They're saying this from one elected official to the next elected official. You're not coming after our kids, and you better stop this. We saw this in the House this year. Not my first 2 years, but we saw this year because there was one added element to it, and that is our state had already overspent $1.5 billion, and we need to recoup that somehow. Okay, which, by the way, they didn't. They say we passed a balanced budget. That's a lie. They just did a bunch of other little shell games to make that look like what they did. I can explain that to you all day, but they lied to us, and they actually ended up with more of a deficit than we started with, which is about 1.2 billion actually. And if you really want to get into the weeds of that, we actually owe we're in debt to about 5.5 billion. Democrats say, no, it's not debt, because it's called like a certificate of promise or something, where you define this however you want. I'm just going to tell you what it is. The state of Colorado has gone to lenders and say, can we have a bunch of money? Yes, you can. But you'll have to pay it back to us sometime in the future. And sometimes these are 0% or very low percent. What would you call that? I call that a loan. The Democrats say that is not a loan. They gave us that money. But you have to pay it back. Well, yeah. So it's a loan. No, it's not a loan. They gave it to us. That's the circular conversations we have in the Capitol. But here's the thing, they only added to the budget. They didn't take away. So you got Democrats that we watched this. It didn't happen in my first 2 years, but we sat and watched them get up in into the well and fight against each other's bill back and forth. And basically when that happens, all the Republicans say, hey, just get you some popcorn, sit back, and let this go. Right? Don't let them get mad at you. Let them be mad at each other. And we watch this happen because why? The Democrats are fractured. Are they going out and telling other Democrats? Are they calling people out here and saying, hey, if you're a Democrat, vote Republican? No, that's never going to happen. But what happens is they begin to realize our state has been crumbling and crumbling and crumbling for a long time. And when you come after our kids, that's enough. And the strongest areas we're seeing this is in the Boulder, Fort Collins. Not Denver as much, but Boulder and Fort Collins, because family, children don't come after our kids. And so, that's to me, seems short. Probably didn't seem short to you, but that's the short and simple of how I'm going to be the next governor of Colorado.
So you mentioned those three demographics. For those of us that live out here in rural Colorado, what does our vote mean to you?
So,
does our vote, because let's be honest, we talked about this earlier, a lot of us are under the impression because of our size that our vote really doesn't matter. But yet, when we made our trip up to the Capitol, you guys were gracious enough to show us that combined, if we unite, our vote can make a very big difference. It can swing an election, it can swing Senate seats, Congress seats. So how do you explain that to rural Colorado, that absolutely your vote matters when like-minded people come together?
right,
Because I think we kind
this is vital. So here's part of the reason. It's not all the reason, but part of the reason that I come out and have these moments, right, is because we still need to wake up the rural communities. Okay, statistically, the rural Republicans. There are different statistics for rural Democrats, but the statistics for rural Republicans is the amount of people that are showing up to vote is slowly going down every year. Over time, it's going down. Like this last presidential election, it was a bump. But presidential elections are always bumps, and then you have Trump. I mean, Trump is a force to be reckoned with. But here's part of the other part of this same conversation is a lot of the stuff that Trump is doing is also going to contribute to me being the next governor of Colorado. Because he's starting to do things that everybody's been talking about for 50 years and nobody's done. Yeah. Even the simple thing of doing some kind of Doge mentality that says, we're actually going to hold people accountable. Finding out that Hillary Clinton's daughter got $68 million through USAID. That's just one of the hundreds of things. So Trump is actually starting to do some of this stuff. Now, I would like to see the follow-through where Chelsea Clinton actually goes to jail, but you know, that's a huge ask. But here's where the rural communities are so vital, is we've got to not... See, by me going, most of the pastors that I'm going and talking to around the state of Colorado are rural pastors. Right? It may be a church of 30 people or 50 people or whatever, but if that pastor will just get up and say, hey guys, we may have missed the boat a little bit. And this is what was happening with Amendment 79. Is pastors all over the state started saying, like 2 weeks before, which means a lot of people already voted, saying, hey, we've got to vote against this. This is not okay. If pastors will start doing that on the major moral issues, it'll wake the churches up. Now you say, well, our church only got 25 people in it. But how many of those are across rural Colorado? I pastored in Rocky Ford. When I got to Rocky Ford, our church was about 20 people. We grew to about 200 while I was there, which means we were like a mega church in Rocky Ford, La Junta, Ordway, all that area out there, Los Angeles. And here's the thing. That 25 people, and then the church down the block that's got 30 people, and then the church over here that's got 50, and then the next community over that's got 30 people. You do that all across the Front Range, and we're seeing this already start to turn greatly in the western slope, is all these rural churches are saying, wait a second. First, the west slope gets left out of a lot of stuff. That's already a major problem. That's why they put the wolves in the west slope, because they knew that it would almost be lost in the mix. Because the Front Range doesn't pay attention to the west slope. Except now they're starting to. because they really don't want the wolves there. And so,
We kind of have that same problem here.
yeah, and specifically going north here is a major thing. But here's what happens. You go from community to community, and now it's not 30, 50, whatever. It's 600,000 people. That's the reality of rural Colorado. A lot of people don't pay attention. Now, am I going to get a lot of Democrat votes in rural Colorado? Not necessarily, but I will say when you go to the younger demographic and they're seeing this and they've got kids in the school down the road, I am going to get some of those Democrats. Because it's no longer about the Democrat Party. My age, it's the party affiliation first, most of the time. In the 30-year-olds, it's not. It's my kids. And so I am going to get Democrat votes throughout rural Colorado, too. But here's the biggest thing. I still need rural Colorado to talk to rural Colorado. You got to stir your neighbors. You got to go to my website and send your email group videos that I've done. Do something to just, even if long term they don't vote for me for governor. I mean, that would be a major lapse in their judgment. But if they don't vote for me long term and they vote for somebody else, at least they're voting. And that's what we've got to do. My website, my videos, all of the things that we're doing, the emails we put out regularly, it will stir your neighbors. Even if long term they don't vote for me, it'll stir them and they will get out and vote. And that's what we've got to have happen. We do have the plan. I've got a ground game team, a solid campaign team out of Washington State, and I've got guys that we're going to hit that Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, but we're specifically going after Democrat voters in those three areas. Okay? Out here, you need to talk to your friends about just stirring the base and saying, vote.
Well, I admit that when you agreed to come out here so quickly, I was a little surprised. And so, for myself, I really appreciate the fact that you came out here. I mean, there's not a ton of us here, but a lot of us know a lot of people. And so, the reason I asked the question is because that camera's running. And when we get done, I can share that with thousands of people.
Yeah.
And the fact, and I wanted to make sure that rural Colorado understands that their vote is important to you enough for you and your wife to drive from Colorado Springs down here today. Because, to be honest, over the past few election cycles, especially for governor, you haven't seen, at least I haven't seen that. And so I agree. The church, more than anything, has to wake up, the pastor of the church. And then we have to come to the understanding that our votes individually have no effect. But, like you said, 25 votes, 30 votes, 50 votes, before long, they all add up. And for the most part, I would say that rural Coloradoans are like-minded, either Republican, conservative, or Democrat. Well, I used to be Democrat, conservative Democrats. We're not off by that much now. There's a few that are way out there.
That's the same across the whole state. The average Democrat, now not in the major urban area, those three areas, but the average Democrat across the state of Colorado is much more closely aligned with Republican than they are where the Democrat Party has gone to. But let me also add to, yes, we drove all the way out here to meet with you guys, but I'll drive. You want to have a group of people in your house and say, you know, these 10 people, my neighbors or my friends or family, whatever, they weren't here today, but I think I could set up a dinner at the house. We'll drive back out here. This is the reason is it's not just about, like you're saying, the 25, 30. Every single one of those 25 votes is an individual that had to vote once, right? And then you get to 25, then you get to 30. But this is much bigger than just right now today. We have a window in 26 that I don't think we're going to get again. With everything that Trump is doing and everything that the leftists and Marxists in the state are doing, with everything that Polis has been doing, we have a window, like a tidal wave that has been building across the entire United States. And I think it's coming across Colorado too. We have a window in 26. We can flip this state back. All 4 seats. And if you talk to the average Republican elected official, they'll say, well, we think we can get 5 or 6 seats in the House and maybe a couple in the Senate. Because that is not what my guys are doing. We've been doing analytical studies like crazy with this. My campaign team, and we presented this to the state chair, Britta Horn. I'm sorry, we have not. We've presented it to almost everybody else in the state office and in the caucus leadership and everything. Britta has not agreed to meet with us yet, but we're eventually going to present it to her. We think we can flip 14 seats in the House, this in 26. I need this. So it's not just you coming out and voting for me, or me coming out here and convincing one person to vote for me. Guys, we also need to flip the House, and we need to flip the Senate, because if I don't have the House and the Senate, it's going to be a day-by-day fight. It's going to be exactly what I've been doing in the House of Representatives for the last 3 years, which is being very ineffectual, just getting a message, but very ineffectual within the building. And so your vote and your neighbor's vote, we just have a window right here we have got to capitalize on, and we can turn Colorado red. Now here's a bigger picture to that. You think about this. Colorado has become the most liberal state in the United States in the last 3 years. We have the most pedophilic-friendly laws in the United States. We are also the most human trafficking-friendly state in the United States, according to our laws. Me, I get elected as governor. I'm not just a Republican. I'm hardcore conservative. I'm a Christian. I'm a pastor. And I'm a sitting representative. I get elected as governor. That sends shockwaves across the entire United States. There are other states that they're weighing this out. All the different issues, all the different moral, social, economic issues all across the United States, immigration issues. We flip Colorado, and a lot of these states go, maybe we can too. Maybe we can stand up and say something. Maybe we can do this. And it will send shockwaves across the Marxist liberal mentality across the United States, where they go, wait a second, we're seeing the walls crumble. If we can do this in Colorado, I have almost a begging mentality. Let's get people out to vote. That has to include the rural communities. We have to. I have to be governor. We have to flip the House and the Senate. And then you will see all through the system of Colorado, commissioners, city councils, mayors, all of a sudden things are flipping all over the state. But we're going to do it at the top, which is not usually how it works. It usually goes the other way. But we have a window right here. We can start at the top and go down. Because we can do this. I know we can do this. Yes, sir?
How many of these far left senators and representatives in Colorado are up for re-election in 26? Even if we turn some of them to a more reasonable Democrat,
that is some of the strategy. I'm not actually going to be working strongly on the strategy of the House and the Senate. We're trying to mobilize our state party, our caucus, Senate and House, so that I'm going to reclaim the governor's chair, and they're going to reclaim the House and the Senate. Some of those, because of natural attrition, you'll have the most liberal. In fact, we gained 3 seats in the House this last year. We were a super minority. We got enough votes to just be a minority by 1 vote. Okay? The 3 Democrats that lost were the most aggressive liberal of all the Democrats. That cannot be coincidence. Okay? So we are going to see that too. We are, and by the way, our House this year is more conservative than the first 2 years I was in, right? With some of these switches. So yes, we're going to see some Democrat seats that are ultra liberal drop down to moderates, maybe. A moderate from their side and moderate from our side is different conversations. But we're going to see that happen too. But we know that from the most egregious of these seats, of the 14, there's about 8 that are the most egregious. We're going for the full with that. We're not going to try to help them drop it down to Democrat. We're going to run some very strong candidates and completely sweep those seats over. The next 5 or 6 after that, that's where your fight's going to be. Because we may not get every one of those. I think we will, because our strategy is pretty solid. But I think we will. But if not, if we can at least one or two of those, a more moderate Democrat, that does help. But I'm saying this selfishly as a governor. I want all of them. Because the Senate is who confirms my appointments, right? I need seats in the Senate. The House is who does the budget. Do you realize that's the only job of the House of Representatives, according to the Constitution? It's not to pass laws. They have one job: pass a balanced budget. That's it. All the laws is what we've turned it into, but it's just to pass a balanced budget. So I need enough to make sure, because I'll be honest with you, my day one, we've already got my first 100 days. A lot of this is already outlined. Day one, I'm going to present a budget that's going to cut billions from the existing budget. When Polis got in office, our annual budget in Colorado was $29 billion. Now it's $44 billion, just under his leadership. You can cut 10 of that like that, and you'll have a lot of people whining and crying, but you'll still have all the services that the state is obligated to provide. We just need to cut that budget. Well, I have to have the House to do that. I have
So by
to.
speaking truth, like you were talking about, and you'll know the answer to this. So when the HB 1312 was in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and there was over 700 people that had signed up to testify, I read some articles after the vote that because of all the testimonies that were given against that bill, there were some Democratic lawmakers that changed their mind. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true in the Senate. It's not true in the House.
Right, but in the Senate.
In the Senate. In the House, we are absolutely leftist, Marxist nuts. We are nuts in the House, okay? But they did change a couple of votes in the Senate. And here's the bigger thing that happened, is they got some amendments to change some things. Now, some of that was a smoke screen, and they said, the bill's so much better now. If a Republican tells you that, call them on it, okay? I don't think any Republican will say that, but a Republican says, the bill is better now because of those amendments. That's not true. It actually made it worse. But it's more comfortable to say that, because then it doesn't look like we're just completely a crazy state. They did do some amendments. Like one of them took out the actual language that says they're going to come get your children, except for the fact that we've already been doing that in Colorado. We had about 15 people testify that had their children taken away because they didn't go by the transgender ideology. So it's already happening. It took it out, but what it did is it put it in another form where now all of these Christian organizations, schools, camps, all this other stuff, they have to adhere to the ideology, or they lose their camps, they lose their schools. Private schools will be shut down if they don't let boys use girls' bathrooms and things like that. Okay, this is like junior high kids, because we know that junior high boys, their minds are always pure and right in all things. So let them go in the girls' bathroom. It does not matter. We've lost, I think you said it earlier, we've actually lost our mind. We've become a state of insanity here.
So you got to be careful when they talk about amendments.
Yes, you always have to be careful.
Such as California, they passed a law. In the beginning of the law, when it was in committee and everything, it said that a parent had 28 days after the birth of a child to decide whether they want that child to live or not.
Yeah. Colorado has the same law.
Yeah.
Well, because of some, people just said they're crazy, they made an amendment, and they took that wording out and replaced it with no person shall be prosecuted or can be prosecuted
Yeah.
for eliminating a child within 20 days.
Yeah.
So all they did was change the wording, but the law stayed the same. So
You do have to be careful with amendments. It's a way to play games.
you just gotta be
Sometimes,
careful to read it.
sometimes amendments are legitimate, but not when we're so lopsided with Democrat, Republican. If you're kind of close to the middle, amendments actually do affect things, but not like we are right now. So,
He asked how many seats would be up for election, that all the House have the same. That was his question.
Oh, yeah, I don't necessarily know the answer to that question. I could look it up fairly.
All of the House representatives will be up for election,
Yes,
and half the Senate.
half the Senate. That sounds right. Yeah, all of the House, every seat in the House is up every 2 years for election. Okay, every Senate seat is every 4 years, and so every 2 years is halfway through half of them. So, all right then. I think I have.
I love your message.
Thank you.
Stay with it.
Grab one of our. Oh, you have the rack card there.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I could go all night, and I'll answer any questions you want. But definitely go to my website. It'll give you all of our platform stuff, and also we're doing, and I will be reaching into different areas through Eastern Colorado for this. We're setting up. I have 5 planks or plans that we're working through for the whole state, and we're going to build teams like committees to put people on. That one of those 5 areas is kind of like in your wheelhouse, and the committees will be like Zoom a couple times between now and the end of the year. We'll just get some people together on Zoom and say, okay, here's the 3 things, and this will all be written down on the website as criteria. I don't think we have this part on the website yet, but what laws do you want to change? What laws do you want to add? What laws do you want to do away with within the arena? So, for example, plan number one is that we want to reclaim, because that's our focus is reclaim Colorado. We want to reclaim parenthood and childhood. We're specifically using the terms parenthood and childhood because we want to pull some of this terminology back to truth on our side. Okay, the elected officials in the state of Colorado are taking away childhood. Now they're doing that in multiple ways. The transgender bill was one of those, but they're taking away childhood, and we want to reclaim that. And so that'll be one that we have, and you can go on to the website. I don't know, are they on the website, or is that your thing? Okay. It should be on the website pretty soon
There's
here.
a bunch on there, but they're not the ones that we.
But there'll be 5 major areas. Safety and security is a big one. That's going to include policing. That's going to include illegal immigration crime. That's going to include drugs, all this kind of thing. But it's also going to include parenthood and childhood. That we want you to be safe. Our representatives, we had to file a formal complaint with the governor's office and wrote a letter as the Republican representatives because about half our representatives have their offices are across the road from the Capitol. Mine's in the Capitol. There's a big building next to it. That's where their offices are. Just walking across the intersection, that's all the doors are right there. They get kicked, they get spit on, they get cussed at, they get shoved by drug addicts and homeless people and all kinds of, and the state police are standing right there and they won't do anything. And so little things like that. We want people to be safe in the state of Colorado. Now on the safety and security, you're not as affected in rural communities as in the urban areas, but you still, and this is part of safety and security, you still have the right to own a firearm. It doesn't matter what kind. It says bear arms. It didn't say bear only the lowest of all of the arms being manufactured at that time.
Right.
Just said bear arms. And by the way, it says no infringement too. Concealed carry, 3-day laws, red flag laws, all of those are infringements. And they should be done away with according to the Constitution.
Yes.
When I'm governor, we will work on that. I can't do away with all of them, but some executive orders you can actually push back some of those things and get rid of them. And so all that kind of stuff. You can go on the website. You can look at this. You'll have emails and stuff on the website. You can contact us. If you want to be part of a group or a committee or anything, email us. And we've got an entire team of people that are literally all over the state that will start plugging you into different things that you can do. If you want to help on a local level, if I'm the guy you think needs to be the governor and you want to help like knock on doors or put out signs or do something like that, let me know. You can email and the people will be on you like ticks on a dog. Okay? We don't have ticks in Colorado, but you know what I mean. All right?
Oh, yes,
So,
we do have to.
do we? There's not a whole lot in Colorado Springs.
Out here there is.
But my wife and I both grew up in Texas. Ticks, every time you walked into your yard, you came back with ticks. That's
Go
what
down to the river and go swim and see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't want ticks. That's not my goal. I'm not shooting for them.
I
But
have a question
Yes, sir.
When you become governor, will you make sure the person you put in charge of agriculture has an agricultural background?
Yeah. We're also fighting very strongly against the lady that they're trying to appoint to this right now. She has no agricultural background. In fact, her background,
And she's against it.
that's the point, is that's why she's being put into this position. Governor Polis does not like rural Colorado. He does not like ranching. He does not like farming, and he has been trying to destroy it from day one. Okay? The reason is not just because he doesn't like cows or something like that. It's because he thinks the state should own everything, including property and industry or whatever. But we are still, there's two major things that define Colorado. We are still a farming and ranching state, hands down. Okay, which has always been irritating to me, because why do we get beef shipped into Colorado from outside of Colorado? Why don't we buy our beef in Colorado?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I buy my beef in Colorado, or I call ranchers, hey, will you sell me a beef? You know, I've been doing that for years, and pigs. But I have to tell you a sad story. We went to Virginia last week. We have two freezers. One is almost all, well, it is all meat. I moved it right before we left, and it got unplugged.
Oh,
Oh, no. We know.
Hundreds of pounds.
Yes.
Hundreds. That hurts me so deeply. So we're ranching, farming. But here's another thing. We are also still, and we will be for decades, we are an oil, gas, and coal state too. But the governor hates that, and the Marxists in the House, they hate it the most, and they have said publicly from the dais down there that they will eventually do away with oil and gas in Colorado. But the wind farms and the solar panels will not produce what they're saying they're producing. It does not support the grid. And so we still have to have that. And so the ag lady you're talking about, so here's one of the privileges that I have as a governor, is the day that I'm elected, I get to appoint all my own people.
Right.
I already have somebody picked out for ag. Okay, I can't say it publicly yet. He and I have talked about it. But he's part of the ranching farming community. Why don't we use those people for this? It kind of makes sense. But I get to replace all those people, and I will day one. They will. People are like, well, you know, they have jobs. Okay, here's your pink slip. Go figure it out somewhere else. Because you shouldn't be in the position in the first place. You have no idea how to run this. And we're going to do this all across the state.
well, we got the DJ Basin, and that's the biggest basin with natural gas in it.
Yes.
That's the Denver-Julesburg Basin.
Yeah.
It's huge.
And so you remember when Trump got elected the first time? Not the second time or the third time, but the first time he got elected. Within less than a year, we were now exporting oil and gas again.
Yep.
Why can't we do that?
Yeah.
Because the only reason that you would not do that in the United States or not do that in the state of Colorado is because you don't like the industry.
That's right.
It has nothing to do with the citizens or electricity or oil and gas. It has to do with you think this is a big evil, the big evil oil.
Yep.
Right? It's not. We can reclaim that too. We will reclaim oil and gas in Colorado.
One last question.
Yes, sir.
Well, maybe not, but for now. A lot of small towns like what are in our counties, we have 3 little towns in this county. And we struggle to come up with incentives to bring businesses to our communities, to keep our communities from dying. Do you have a plan, or would you consider looking at ways for the state to possibly help us to generate some incentives?
Yeah.
At least more of a jump start than anything, without there being a bunch of conditions of, well, now you owe the state, or the state's going to control this, this, and this.
Yeah. So again, if the state comes in and says we're going to help you grow the community, but now you're on the hook for us, that's Marxism.
Right.
Okay? That's not helping the small communities.
Right.
That's not helping the people of Colorado. We already have a handful of plans that we're going to do, but some of this that I'm talking about building some of these communities, I'm meeting with a big ranchers group. I don't actually know when. My wife does my calendar, but in the next few weeks, meeting with a group of ranchers down south and west to do this, to have the conversation. I've got some plans put together, and they came from ranchers and farmers, but I want now that I have the plans, I want to be able to sit down and say, okay, help me tweak this. Are these legitimate? Will they work or will they not work? There's a bunch of things you can do almost overnight to bring life back to a lot of the rural communities.
Because a lot of our children want to come home,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but there's nothing for them to come home to.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's not like our local government has blown our money or just over time, because like we had a sugar beet factory in Oakland, which is 7 miles from here. And agriculture and that sugar beet factory, we had more millionaires in this county because of sugar beets than any county our size.
Well, think about the couple of things that I've already mentioned about this. If we bring oil and gas back and put the emphasis on that, places like this blow up.
Right.
Because you have so much of this. You're not drilling for oil in downtown Denver. Okay? Which, by the way, is why the Marxists in downtown Denver don't want oil and gas to run the state. Okay? Put oil and gas back as a priority, and a lot of local rural communities throughout Colorado immediately begin to blossom. Buy beef, buy pork, buy crops from Colorado, for Colorado, and farms all across the state of Colorado begin to open up and explode again. Some of the stuff is already here, it just needs to be governed properly. It's not being governed properly.
Right.
In fact, the governor is attacking these things. Do some basic things and you open up the rural communities again.
I sat on our economic development for 12 years, and the grant money that was available was mainly federal grant money that was given to the state, especially the last 8 years since Polis has been governor. There's always been a stipulation.
Yeah. And corruption.
Right, and basically the money was earmarked for special interest groups, and that was it. For Joe Smith, who wants to start a coffee shop, or we have 2 major intersections, or interstates that run right through there. And there was no money in any of that grant money, I'm talking about billions of dollars, that would help start a distribution center or give us money to offer incentives to bring a distribution center here.
Yeah. Some of the language that is in one of my planks when it comes to the economy and jobs and things is that we're going to make sure that the money that's supposed to be going to rural communities goes to rural communities. There is a lot of money already set aside for rural communities from federal government and state government, but the corruption in our state siphons that money into other things. There is already, to ask the big question is how can we do economic development again in rural communities? A lot of it's already sitting there waiting from the community and from the state, but it's being hacked. Right. And people are getting all their hands in the pie. And we continuously bring this out in the Capitol, specifically your rural community legislators. They say this belongs to rural communities. The severance tax off of oil and gas, that they diverted hundreds of millions of dollars of that severance tax to other things in the state of Colorado that was specifically designed to develop rural communities. Right. That's why the severance tax exists. But they're now siphoning it wherever they want to, because why? They control the House. This is why I need to be the governor.
Right. That's what
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want to know.
How familiar are you with the Perkins Canal?
The what?
The Perkins Canal?
I don't know for sure what you're talking about.
I'd like to talk to the commissioner.
Yeah, the Perkins Canal project for 3 counties, but especially for us, is a major issue. Nebraska's been ramping up trying to actually start breaking ground as soon as they can. If this project goes through, just in our county, we're talking about a loss of pretty much all of our wells. 1,006 wells will go dry, which means all of our farms, all of our ranchers will lose their livelihoods and will lose our communities.
Nebraska has $680
$687 million set aside.
to take our water. This
And
goes
they've
for-
already started sending out condemnation letters to over 8 of our landowners in that land they need to confiscate in order to start digging.
Well, water is always going to be the biggest issue in Colorado.
This is something that was set up 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Somebody had an idea 100 years ago that they think is going to work now.
And we're talking about, it's an engineer speaking, it's insane. We're talking about an open air canal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even a practical concept, and yet they want to try to push it through anyway.
I actually do know what you're talking about, but I heard this from some of your legislators. Dusty Johnson, her and a couple others were talking, and I sat and listened. So I do know some of what you're talking about.
It's not like we're getting any help from the state.
No, you won't. You won't get help from the state.
And-
And here's part of the problem with that. So, do you guys remember when Prop HH went through? Right, we voted against it, but then they called us into special session to vote on it. I mentioned this. You can go look this video up. I mentioned this from the well. I said this whole special session and what we're doing here is a smokescreen, because at that time there were 3 entities. I won't name the entities because I only have a certain amount of proof of this and I don't want to be sued. But I know who they are. But 3 entities in the state were actually working on a multi-billion-dollar plan to do away with water, to sell water, to use the term downstream, to sell water to other places and other situations. Because this has always been the issue. You've got bureaucrats at the state level that shout constantly, oh, farming and ranching and water and all this stuff, but they're the ones working the side deals to sell this water out of state. Well, why, if knowing that we're farming and ranching, wouldn't it make more sense to keep the water in Colorado? If we're truly about farming and ranching, we should be keeping it in Colorado. But these deals go back. This was when I was down in Rocky Ford, so this was late 90s. One of the biggest farmers down there, Holder Farms, onions, all this other kind of stuff, he sold all his water rights down there to Aurora. Well, Aurora was scooping them in like crazy at this time. For what purpose? Because that's a commodity. It's not because they wanted water. It's because that's a manageable commodity, the amount of square foot of water that you can sell to somebody else. If we continue down this line, specifically with yours, but there's another one that we're dealing with in Colorado Springs. There's a major development that they're wanting to come into Colorado Springs. We just voted on this last week, 2 weeks ago. It will dry up major parts of the San Luis Valley down there because they put the development in Colorado Springs and they need water. Well, they were selling it as, oh, this is good for everybody. This helps water in Colorado. That's always the lie that they use. So I know this sounds overly pessimistic, maybe even nihilistic, but I think this is very intentional, and I think it's to dry up parts of Colorado.
This will devastate us. We are so dependent on agriculture and everything that happens in this community.
Yeah.
That shuts down our water, that shuts down our farmers, that shuts
Yeah.
down the whole community. Our schools, our restaurants, everything will be.
It's gone.
Yeah.
This is a horrible deal. We're not.
And you won't be buying beef and corn and stuff.
Yeah, the things that you
Yeah.
said
It
that
won't be.
Colorado's about, it's not going to be here.
This is the same thing going on in the San Luis Valley now. It hasn't hit the Arkansas River Valley yet, but we have to be able to push back against this. And by the way, it starts in the governor's office, some of the selling of water. Unless we can push back against these and reclaim the water back into Colorado. And again, I believe it's intentional. They're trying to dry up certain communities because then the state can come in and buy all your land. Then they can figure out the water later. But they own your land now.
No, Colorado, Nebraska's going to own our land.
Well,
So like you said, it was a deal that was made 100 years ago, but the governor and the state isn't doing anything to try to help us
Yeah.
fight this.
Stop it.
And if they take our water, we don't have,
They're,
we don't have nothing.
again, it sounds overly pessimistic, but I know what I'm talking about here. They are not going to help you. It is intentional that they're not going to help.
Well, they already admitted that I'm going to help. I mean, the head of the water commission pretty much told me point blank that he'll do pretty much anything to keep the state out of court.
Yeah.
Well, if nothing else, with the platform you have, that might be something that you may want to speak on. The fact that
Yeah.
the democratic government we have right now is basically
Yes.
leaving us literally hanging out to dry.
Now, some of these kind of things can be done by executive order day one in the governor's, once I get in the governor's office. And we can actually work on some of the water issues. They're not that difficult to fix. You just have to have the right people wanting to try to fix them. Right now, the people that you should be having to help you, the state, they're actually working against you.
So we just want to make sure you're aware of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and we already have a couple of plans. One of the biggest is what I'm talking about the San Luis Valley. We've already been writing out a plan of how, by executive order, because there's only certain things you can do by executive order. Some you have to do by ballot initiative or legislation. But with executive order, we can turn some of the water around in the state of Colorado and make sure that it's supporting Colorado first. And then, if it needs to flow downstream, fine, but it has to support Colorado first. Yeah. And this is why, when it comes to this, and you'll see this if you go to the website and you see the 5 planks, this is why I would need somebody like you on that committee saying this is what we have to do to fix water. This is what that's one element within a larger plank, but this is what we have to do to fix water. These are fixable things, but not if everybody's fighting against you. Yeah. So guys, so to finish up, please go to the website. Give me any kind of feedback, anything along the way. Give me some bullet points about water and stuff like that. Anything that you think can contribute to the bigger conversation, because we are setting up committees all over the state. And the other part of that is day one next year of session, we're going to come with about 300 bills that are written by the people of Colorado, not by the elected officials. And we're going to present these bills to the caucus and to everybody and say, this is where we're headed. And it will illuminate the Democrats that do not want to work, and potentially Republicans, for the people of Colorado. And you guys will be a part of the development of those policies. So, all right. Well, thanks for having me out here.
Can I get a picture with
You can. Yeah, you can. Most of the time, pictures are about $1,200. Somewhere in
Can't be
there.
over 1450.
Yeah, it can't be that.
Dwayne, take my picture. I don't have my phone. You gotta take
Then he can sell you this picture.
Yeah.
You want to join us, Liz?
Sure. Yeah. It's really him. She really wants to.
Thank you all for
I
watching.
want both of that.
Go ahead and support Scott Bottoms for governor.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I'll pay you the first time that I
Have
saw
a wonderful day.